I'm Kelly. In this video, we're going to focus on how to design the environment for the horror games. First, let's watch a video and think about what kind of feeling this environment brings to you.
After killing his family, the father hung himself with a gun
In PT, the player can feel a strong anxiety even just walking in the hallway. That's because environment design plays a very important role in causing fear. The dark, narrow hallway and some creepy changes every time the player walks through, which invokes the feeling of dread. So, we can see that the good environment design for horror games can invoke the feeling of fear. This is just one of the good examples, and there are also some outstanding environment designs such as Outlast, Resident Evil series, and we're going to discuss about that later. Before knowing how to design the environment for horror games, we need to know what environment design can do for the game. This includes 2 points. First is let the player understanding storytelling, level design, and world building. In the layers of fear, players can learn the story through the paintings on the walls and the room design of the house. In Sanitarium, the environment design of the creepy amusement park heralds the story between the character and his sister. The second is create emotions, which helps the player better understanding the character's feeling. A nice sensory experience is essential for the horror games. The second point is essential. That is, we can create fear emotions by designing a horror atmosphere. So, how to create fear? In many horror games, there are several factors work together to create fear. I will break them down into 4 points and hope can give you some ideas. Number 1. Space design. What can we do for space? Now we have 3 different scenes: square, outdoors, and corridor. If let people choose the scenes in which the terrible situation is most likely to occur, I think most of the votes would go to the corridor. This is because the people will feel uneasy in a small space, because it limits the range of movement and it's harder to escape when encountering the situation. This feeling is similar to claustrophobia. So back to this point, they've already some horror games use this point. In Five Nights at Freddy's, the player can only stay in a small security room, sitting on a chair, and there's no way to go. And also the dark hallway in the Home Sweet Home. The vent that you have to crawl in the dead space. And also a narrow entrance in Resident Evil 7, which is a really classic one. Because of the limited and unpredictable direction of the movement, the players can feel stressed when they enter this place. But doesn't mean that a big space cannot have such an effect on the player. In some games, there are some scenes with huge spaces with no people there. When you enter the scene, suddenly a huge monster or ghost will suddenly show up and scare you. This can also create a feeling of fear. This is because the white space first let down your guard and then catches you by surprise. Number 2. Color design. According to the color psychology, colors can have emotional impacts on the players. In horror games, the following colors are often used, and they often create a feeling of anxiety and fear and works well. This includes warm colors and cold colors. For warm colors, in some researches, some subjects reported increased heart rate or feelings of tension in red and bright yellow condition. For cold colors, such as black is hallmark color of sadness and fear, which is mostly used in horror games. In some researches, people will feel tense or closed in a green room, and also the dark shades of blue can make people feel lonely and detached. Some games has already used them to make a nice environment design. For example, the red is used in the scene of The Evil Within 2 and the creepy building in Nevermind. Bright yellow for the hall in Detention and the flashlight in The Little Nightmares. For cold colors, dark green is used for the room in Madison, dark blue corridor in Home Sweet Home, and the black gradient hallway in PT. These colors help create atmosphere to make people uneasy. Number 3. Limit player's sight. When players cannot see the entire scene clearly, they will start feeling tense because they don't know when and where they will face the danger. This is really useful method for designing the environment for horror games. It can create an atmosphere of uncertainty and mystique to the player's visual. For example, the haze in Silent Hill and Little Hope. There is something deeply unsettling about hearing creatures shuffling around in the fog, and horror then takes place in players' imagination as they wonder when the monster will come shuffling out. For example, make the narrow space with water, which the player cannot observe the danger under the water. And also, cropped field can also help to block the vision, having the player run through the fields and try to find a way out while panicked, which can create an uneasy feeling as well. Besides, we can also use some useful tools to make restrict vision, which can force players to concentrate on a small area, and they can easily be startled if something suddenly appears. For example, the flashlight can limit view in the paper door. The dark scene where the player can only use night vision in Outlast. The camera you must use to get away from the ghost. Design an interesting environment when the player can see something through the keyhole, cracks, or peephole, which can force the player to focus on this. Number 4. Make something abnormal. Sometimes, making the normal scenes become abnormal will arouse the vigilance of the player, which can cause a feeling of uneasiness. If you still remember the scene in PT at the beginning, the first thing you see is a complete sentence, but if you turn around and watch the wall again, the words disappear one by one. It's impossible for the words written on the wall to disappear by themselves. This design makes players think about there may be a ghost did this and start feeling fear. There are some games use this idea. For example, it used to be a normal hallway and then become endless. This design makes players feel uneasy, as if they will never get out. And never mind, in the beginning, everything is normal in the amusement park, but after, the blood rains down and the plasma is everywhere. This creates a spooky and terrifying atmosphere. So, if you can add some details like this, will help you to create a nice atmosphere for the players. Overall, in this video, we pick up 4 tips for how to design an environment for the horror games. Try to use them together for making a good scenes for the game. Because in the horror games, the factors usually work together to create fear. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.